I'm Shannon Martin. Tonight, thousands protest in the nation's capital, rallying against public health measures.
We're just here to support no mandates. This has to stop. Enough's enough.
Organizers urge the growing crowd to be peaceful as Ottawa police remain on high alert.
After those 5 years, it is difficult to forget.
Remembering those who died in a mosque shooting 5 years ago and standing up against Islamophobia. And
no garbage trucks have passed by. It's been hard for us to pass through.
Piles of snow and piles of garbage. Almost 2 weeks later, some residents in Toronto are still feeling the aftermath from that massive storm.
This is CBC Saturday News.
Well, let's take you live right now to Parliament Hill this Saturday evening. Thousands of people all day have been there protesting COVID vaccine mandates and pandemic rules and regulations. Convoys of trucks and other vehicles have been rolling into the nation's capital. They're coming from coast to coast, as far away as British Columbia and the Atlantic provinces. So far, protesters have been loud and disruptive, but peaceful to this point. Security is high. CBC News has learned Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his family have been moved from their home to an undisclosed location in Ottawa over security concerns. Well, Ashley Burke has been covering the protest all day. She has our story from Ottawa tonight.
Freedom! A wall of sound engulfing the main event. 3 lanes of trucks and vehicles making their support heard. The crowd swelling on Parliament Hill to look like this.
I've cried several times. I felt quite almost sick to my stomach, just with such joy of just, there are people from every walk of life here.
Convoys of truckers protesting vaccine mandates and their supporters rolled into the capital Saturday by the hundreds from the east, south, and west. Trucker Valentin Chobano says he turned down jobs transporting cars across the U.S. border because of the new vaccine rules.
Lots of work. Because of all this garbage, you can't cross border, they give you all the headache,
This supporter handed out copies of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and wants the government to end all COVID mandates from masks to lockdowns.
These people here are paid by us, we're not paid by them, so they should be listening to us. Well, let's
go! On the Hill, security tight. Ottawa police said it prepared for a crowd of 10,000 people and brought in forces from multiple regions to help. A helicopter that said F. Trudeau flew low over the crowd.
Hey, Justin, are you home?
And one of the more extremist voices of the group, Pat King, showed up at the Prime Minister's office. He claims to be an organizer.
We're looking for you, baby! He's nowhere to be found.
The RCMP moved Justin Trudeau from his home to an undisclosed location. He remains in isolation after one of his children tested positive for COVID this week.
Ottawa's mayor says that he hopes these protesters will make their point peacefully and then be on their way. But right now it's unclear how long this could all go on. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Earlier, CBC News spoke to Dr. Isaac Bogott. She is an infectious disease specialist at Toronto General Hospital. We asked, as the public grows tired of restrictions and mandates, what broader discussions need to happen? Here's what he had to say.
So obviously, I think it's fair to say that we're all sick of this. Every one of us. I can't imagine. Every single Canadian is probably fed up. No one likes to stay at home or limit their contacts or wear masks. I mean, this is tough. This is challenging for everybody. And I think it's fair to acknowledge that. It's also fair that we should be evaluating and reevaluating policy as we have more and more data. And of course, policy will change with time. And it's extremely important to telegraph that and to let people know that the policy will change with time, because it has, and it will continue to do so as the threat on the ground changes and as new data emerges. The other important point, too, is that I'm always thankful that we live in Canada. We live in such a wonderful wonderful country, and peaceful protests are, this is obviously the way to go. We've seen protests for many different issues, and this is yet another issue. And I think we should celebrate that we have the ability to protest peacefully. We have freedom of association and freedom of assembly, and this is wonderful news. But it is discouraging to see that some of these protests have been infiltrated by individuals who are promoting bigotry, by an anti-science movement, and I think that really detracts from what other people in those protests are really trying to get at here. I mean, the science is very clear. First of all, there's no room for bigotry, and secondly, the science is very clear on what vaccines do and don't do, and I don't think that does any cause any service by bending some very good scientific data that we have.
That's Dr. Isaac Bogott. Well, let's look at the latest COVID numbers now. Today, the province reporting 3,439 COVID-19 hospitalizations, along with 56 new deaths. This month alone, more than 1,000 deaths connected to COVID have been recorded. And even though Omicron is less deadly than previous variants, experts say there is a correlation between the mounting number of deaths and the high number of cases with the Omicron wave.
And it's just simply the numbers, sadly. You have a huge number of infections on a massive scale, and there are going to be a lot of people dying.
The most recent figures from Public Health Ontario show, on average, 52 deaths linked to COVID every day. That's a rate only surpassed at the height of the first and second waves before vaccines became available.
Death rates are far higher in those who are unvaccinated compared to those who are vaccinated, right? And then there's, they're far higher, like in unvaccinated compared to double vaccinated compared to triple vaccinated. So we know that if you're triple vaccinated, your risk of death is a lot lower. We can say that, all things, controlling for all these other factors, this is how well the vaccines are working in preventing severe outcomes.
COVID restrictions in Ontario will start easing on Monday, but scientists expect the daily death count in the province to continue trending upwards well into next month. Okay, in other news now, a grim anniversary. It was 5 years ago that a gunman killed 6 people at a Quebec City mosque. Today marks the first National Day of Remembrance of the attack and action against Islamophobia. Sarah Levitt has our story now. She looks at what's changed in the last 5 years and what some say still needs to happen.
A new look for the Quebec Islamic Cultural Centre. Nearly all remnants of the shooting 5 years ago are finally gone. The green carpet replaced with a red one. The walls etched with bullet holes replaced. Not forgotten, though, the 6 men who lost their lives here on January 29th, 2017.
After those 5 years, it is difficult to forget.
Mohamed Labidi was president of the center then and says an escalation of events led to the tragedy.
It began with simple graffiti, and after that, the head of the park. It's perhaps months later the tragedy happened.
Moi, l'attentat, c'est comme il a passé juste hier, là.
Mohamed Kabar says for him it's like the shooting happened just yesterday. On Facebook, he posts a graphic reminder. The effects of the terrorism that struck the Great Mosque of Quebec on my body so that we do not forget. He considers himself one of the lucky ones, shot in the foot and the knee. At his barbershop, Kabar can only work a few hours. Standing is still painful. But he also says while the psychological trauma of that night doesn't fade, society also won't let him forget. He says now the Quebec government's secularism law is hurting the Muslim community. It bans most government employees from wearing religious symbols.
Les musulmans, ils ont payé cher. On a payé, on a perdu des gens. Qu'est-ce que vous voulez plus?
There is discrimination in this law, and it should be not allowed.
Today, though, the attention is on the victims of the tragedy and their families. Lining one wall of the mosque, an artist's rendering of the 6 men killed, a present for their loved ones. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
Ceremonies honoring those who died were planned in several cities today, including Ottawa, but that event was moved online. Organizers say they made the call over safety concerns connected to the protest convoy. Well, it has been nearly 2 weeks since that massive snowstorm hit southern Ontario. The cleanup in Toronto still going on. In one neighborhood, all that snow has caused garbage to pile up as garbage trucks still can't get through. Talia Ricci was there today.
These residents weren't expecting a pile of snow and a pile of trash.
It's been hard for us to pass through, so it's pretty difficult, It makes a mess. There's animals passing by at night. It smells.
The garbage is everywhere, it's very messy. I called 311 twice.
Around York University, some residents say garbage day and recycling day were missed because trucks couldn't access the lanes after the storm.
Last Thursday, people started to call us and say, hey, what's going on? Our garbage wasn't picked up.
The area's councillor says all the garbage should get picked up in the coming days, but it's not the first time this part of the city has experienced slow waste removal after a storm. And unfortunately, he says there isn't an immediate solution.
There's very little that can be done. If we get a big snowfall and the garbage trucks can't get into the laneways, then people are going to have to be patient, and we're going to be able to get to the waste once that snow is removed. And removing the snow is problematic here, always has been.
The city says snow removal operations are still underway, and the work has continued 24/7 since the day of the storm. Adding, transportation services provided laneway salting and removed the snow at the front of the laneways in the village at York University, which allows waste collection trucks to access the area. But City Councillor Josh Matlow says he's hearing from residents throughout the city who are having similar issues, nearly 2 weeks after the major snowfall.
What I'm asking city staff to address is, why haven't so many local roads been adequately cleared yet? Sidewalks are still impassable, and access with respect to garbage, transit, etc., are still really difficult.
Matlow says he's pushing the city to come up with a better plan to provide faster and better snow clearing service. Residents with overflowing bins hope they don't have to deal with this again.
I couldn't enter my garage for 4 days.
They should pick up as long as possible, as quickly as possible.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Time now for our first look at the forecast. Victoria Fenn Alvarado is here. I'm starting to feel a bit like a broken record, but it's cold, and it's still cold,
It's still cold. Last week we were talking about the same thing, and the situation remains. We do have extreme cold warnings in effect for a majority of southern Ontario. It's the type of weather I recommend you absolutely need to bundle up for. Minus 24 is what it's feeling like for your Saturday evening. It's the type of weather that I would prefer to stay indoors, maybe watch the Leafs game tonight. As you head into the morning, minus 19 is what it's going to feel like. Really not much of a relief there. By the afternoon, though, slight relief. Minus 5 in Toronto, feeling like minus 10. Windsor, London, minus 5 there as well. That's for your Sunday. We really don't have any systems to track this weekend, just a bunch of cloud cover. But I can say we have another system. We have high confidence that this is going to be an impactful system Wednesday into Thursday. That warm-up is going to be a significant key to this story. I'll get into this in your long range.
Okay, thanks, Victoria.
Join our group and you'll be instantly cool.
Yeah, that's no joke. These Ottawa ice dippers are keeping it cool and connected. Why do they brave the icy waters on the regular? We'll find out straight ahead. Welcome back. Big disappointment for student athletes and coaches right across the province. The Ontario Federation of School Athletic Associations canceled provincial championships. As Dale Manukduk reports, titles weren't the only thing on the line.
It's every basketball player's dream, clock winding down. But for the Sir Winston Churchill Senior Boys team in St. Catharines, the chance to do it in the big game is gone.
And it was like the rug was pulled out under us. I know that these boys had set goals, and OFSA was that final goal for them.
The decision to cancel winter championships was made due to the uncertainty regarding school sports and local public health restrictions. That means no alpine skiing, Nordic skiing, snowboarding, basketball, volleyball, hockey, or curling. Swimming and wrestling were canceled earlier. Coach Martin Cook has worked hard to keep hope and spirits alive over the last 2 years.
despite the lockdowns and despite all the bad news, they just kept grinding no matter what. But that was always with the caveat that we're going to get a chance to play.
For some athletes, it's the final chance to play sports at the highest level they're capable of. Not everyone goes from OFSA to the NBA, like York Region's Andrew Wiggins, or to the National Beach Volleyball team, like Victoria Altamar.
As an athlete, my fondest memories were OFSA in my high school experiences.
Altamar says it's the first and maybe last chance for many student athletes to have the unique experience of participating in a multi-day event.
It really acts as a culmination of hard work, of those hard-fought victories, and for some of them, it's their send-off of a graduating year.
This year's Nordic Skiing Championships were set to be held at Lakefield College School, north of Peterborough.
The top athletes at OFSA in Nordic are scouted. This is a chance for them to showcase their talent. Many of them have gone on to be national team members to compete at World Cups, at Olympics.
The school spent 3 years renovating its trails for the championships and is looking at perhaps hosting a race to showcase it and athletes. While he understands it can be challenging, it's that type of solution that Coach Cook is looking for from OFSA.
But if there was one time in the course of our lives that I think we had a responsibility for these athletes, it was now.
CBC reached out to OFSA but did not receive a response. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
Hockey Day in Canada is taking place across the country. This year, the big event is highlighting diversity and inclusion in the sport.
Kids are having so much fun, and this is an atmosphere of inclusivity and love, and just sharing the common goal of making the game as inclusive as possible and for everyone. My goal is to allow hockey to reach its fullest potential, and that's including as many people as possible into it.
It is the 22nd year for Hockey Day in Canada. All 7 Canadian NHL teams are playing hockey in the marathon event for 13.5 hours. Another iconic Canadian musician is pulling her music from Spotify. Joni Mitchell says she's standing in solidarity with fellow Canadian-born artist Neil Young. You've probably seen the story as it played out all week. At issue, they feel, is vaccine misinformation and podcasting giant Joe Rogan. Lorenda Redekop now with the latest.
Joni Mitchell says there are no two sides when it comes to COVID-19 vaccinations.
This is the way she feels. And she's friends with Neil, and they have the bond of both having survived polio.
This author of a book on Joni Mitchell says that experience as a child, before a vaccine was available, had a big impact on the singer.
She would lay in her bed in the hospital ward and sing Christmas carols. The boy in the bed next to her would yell at her to shut up, and she just sang louder.
Mitchell posted a short statement on her website entitled "I Stand with Neil Young," saying she's decided to remove all her music from Spotify, that irresponsible people are spreading lies that are costing people their lives. She links to an open letter to the streaming service by scientists and medical experts. They raise concerns about conspiracy theories repeated on Joe Rogan's podcast. Here he is defending himself last spring.
I'm not an anti-vax person. My parents were vaccinated. I just said I don't think that if you're a young, healthy person that you need it.
However, medical experts refute that. Rogan is wildly popular and brings in an estimated 11 million listeners per episode.
They paid $100 million to have exclusive distribution of what is the biggest podcast in the world.
After Neil Young said Spotify could choose him or Joe Rogan, the company said it's removed more than 20,000 podcast episodes related to COVID-19 since the pandemic started, but it hasn't touched its biggest star. Some people say they're quitting the streaming service.
The contemporary pop artists who are at the top of the Spotify 200, they're the ones that are really holding all the cards. If any one of them decides to jump in, it's a different ballgame.
And he doesn't expect that to happen because young artists make most of their money from streaming. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
A fearless group is keeping cool by taking a dip in the frozen Ottawa River. It started out just 4 brave souls. Now there's 15 of them. What keeps them coming back? They say it's the positive impact on their bodies and minds.
You just sink down all the way up to your neck and bliss.
If you do not react, just observe, the body changes, and every week it's getting nicer.
Be able to sit there and experience that objectively and just experience the feeling for what it is. It's a pure meditation.
The holes they cut into the ice refreeze overnight. So every day they come equipped with tools to break through again. Some dip for 1 minute, others 10. The bitter cold water gives them a boost of energy and a way to socialize. You know, good on them. I will say that. I am much more of a layers person. I like to be just warm, you know.
Yeah, I don't know how soothing that would be for me. I don't know if that's the most relaxing thing that I would do on my Saturday evening.
Definitely no. And I'd have a big reaction. She said she was getting zen. No, not zen for me.
Not for me either. Yeah. There's something else that might not be a little bit more zen. We have a system on its way. We do have a low headed straight towards the GTA. So, with that being said, we have two possible scenarios. We have Arctic air in the north that is causing this cold, but we have warm air approaching from the south, and that's going to make conditions more like 4 degrees on Tuesday. So, with that being said, the warm air mass, if this lingers around and it stays warm, we could see scenario 1. Mixed precipitation and icy conditions. But if the Arctic air takes over the warm air, we could see heavy snow and cold conditions. Now, we have high confidence that this, no matter what, whether it's option 1 or option 2, it's going to be a high impactful storm. We already saw that storm 2 weeks ago, and this could be another round. Now, the timing on it, we are saying Wednesday, but it really depends on that Tuesday temperature, if the warm remains or if it gets cold. Now, with that being said, that system 2 weeks ago, 20 centimeters already, those snowpacks on the ground, and we're still trying to clear it up. But we could see another 20 centimeters on top of that. By the end of the storm, perhaps on Thursday when it could end, we could be seeing snowpacks up to 46 centimeters high. So if your car looks like this and you have yet to dig it out from the last storm, I recommend you do so by Tuesday. The snow on top of this car, it's going to double. Not only that, the cold conditions, it's going to make it for, you're going to have to end up chiseling your car out basically of that storm. So stay updated this week.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Thanks for keeping us informed. It's coming.
Thank you, Shannon. Yeah, it is on its way.
That is our show for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. You can stay caught up on news anytime on our website, cbcnews.ca. We're going to leave you now with more footage of these people, these very hardy people, enjoying the frozen Ottawa River for fun, they say. Have a good night.
It's phenomenal because it's cold